Hello, welcome to this YouTube channel, and let us resume our discussion on London. In the previous section, that is from line number 1 to 34, we have discussed about the speeches, okay, that have been delivered by the I, okay, or maybe the poet persona, and he should be considered to be Johnson anymore, okay. From this, or in this particular lecture, I will continue or resume my discussion with the text, and it will begin with line number 35. So the rest of the poem, that is beginning from line number 35 to the end, you will find that it has been spoken, or it has been delivered, or it is the speech from Thales, obviously, you see. So the section begins in this particular pattern, you see, that Thales says, "Since worth," he cries, "in these degenerate days, wants even the cheap reward of empty praise." So fundamentally, what you can find here, that the situation actually demands that Thales is actually moving far from London at this moment, and Thales is preparing for his journey. And what happens to be a truth, that Thales is stating that why should I uh, remain in London anymore? Just because you will find that since Worth in these degenerate days. So you will find that fundamentally Johnson is referring to the term degenerate. So the days are degenerate. Why? Because you can find a particular kind of a pollution and corruption is prevailing throughout London, so far as the political perspectives are concerned, so far as the social perspectives are concerned. You see, as I have already mentioned, that Samuel Johnson is to be treated as a true Jacobite and pro-Jacobite, and at the same time he is with the particular view that somehow the Hanoverian dynasties must not rule England, you see. So fundamentally, you will find that the degeneration that it actually indicates, it can refer to the reign of George II, and at the same time, as it is the prime focus of this particular poem, the fundamental focus is being wasted on the ruling of Walpole, obviously. So here it says, Thales says, that since worth in these degenerate days wants even the cheap reward of empty praise. So the terms, you see, that the term want, this want is actually indicating that it is lacking, or maybe it doesn't get the cheap reward of empty praise in those. So ultimately, why the praise, you see, what this particular term is being introduced or referred in this particular section, just because you will find that praise is something that could be aimed or that could be found in these days, only by uh, supporting Walpole and the Walpole government, obviously. That means if you can support blindly Walpole and the Walpole's temperaments or the government that he is ruling, then only you can get the praise. But ultimately, if you say something in opposition to Walpole's canon of thinking, then certainly you will be punished and you will be imprisoned. Okay, that particular kind of reference, as I've discussed earlier regarding Walpole's temperament and the politics that he was imposing upon the upon others, or maybe the Londoners, and so. So here it says, since worth, he cries, in these degenerate days, wants even the cheap reward of empty praise in those cursed worlds. So you see why it is called cursed worlds, because you will find that it is actually referring to London, and London was originally was called considered as a world city. You see, that means surrounding, around London you will find the world, so it is called the world city. So it says therefore that in those cursed worlds, devote to vice and gain. So the terms, you see, just try to point out the terms. Vice, that means the persons are devoted to vice and gain. That means with the help of the vice you can gain something, you see. What form of gain it might indicate? It may refer to any kind of material gain, any kind of political gain, or maybe the gain in the social status. So fundamentally, you will find that if you have to gain the social status, if you have to gain the material property and property related matters, then it might be possible that you have to succumb to vice itself. Yes, that is the fundamental thing. That means in those cursed worlds, devote to vice and gain, since unrewarded science toils in vain. What does it indicate? Unrewarded science. Here you can find that the science, this particular term, it is actually referring to knowledge, okay, or maybe any kind of learning. And learning and knowledge, that is actual learning and actual knowledge, is to be treated as unrewarded there. Why? Because it doesn't have any relation with the Walpole's rule, you see. But fundamentally, you have to consider that just before the age of Samuel Johnson, at the time of Alexander Pope, that is, we consider as the Augustan period, you will find that this particular period is named as the age of prose and reason. So fundamentally, whenever you are in work with the typical 18th century, you will find that the rationalistic faculties are working to the highest extent, okay, in the Augustan period. And at the same time, you will find that here the scientific advancements are gradually moving to the apex. Okay, so fundamentally what happens, that after that particular age of Alexander Pope, that is the Augustan period, after Augustan period, you will find that the science get unrewarded. Okay, that means if you have the proper knowledge, then it will not be not or you will not get any kind of reward from the king or maybe the rulers, and the toils are moving towards something like vain, you see. So here it says that since unrewarded science toils in vain, since hope but soothes to double my distress. Here you will find that the typical, the similar kind of sentences or similar kind of phrases or words have been used at the beginning of sentences, and this is something related to the rhetorical perspectives, anaphora, it is being considered. So here, why the two scenes are used side by side? Because these are actually the causes, these are actually the reasons that Thales is proposing, or Thales is indicating to. So here he says that since unrewarded science toils in vain, since hope but suits to double my distress. That means if I hope that I will get something as a matter of reward, I will get something positive regarding my thinking, regarding my thought processes, regarding my orientations to literature or maybe writing, that ultimately I know that as a result, it will enlarge my distress, it will double my distress. Okay, so if I hope, then I will certainly get my distress there. And every moment leads my little less. So that is the thing. That is, each and every moment, it indicates that whenever I will think of something, I will find that I have little and more little and most little parts, you see. That each and every moment I will certainly be deprived of my properties, I will be deprived of my whether it is the philosophical property or maybe psychological or maybe spiritual or maybe something related to knowledge or maybe the material property. Each and every moment you will find that it leaves my little less. Uh, while yet my steady step, you see, okay, the terms, the spellings are altogether different here. So here it says that while yet my steady steps no staff sustains. What it means, you see. So ultimately, here Thales is trying to propagate, Thales is trying to indicate that while yet I need no staff, here staff, this particular term, is actually referring to a walking stick, you see, to support my steps, which are still steady, you see. So that it indicates that ultimately I can stand on my own at this moment. So this is the ample, or this is the right moment to leave London and prepare for a new life. So that's why he says that while yet my steady steps no staff sustains, and life still vigorous revels in my veins. That means still I can feel the essence of my thinking is working in me. And here the revel, this particular term, it actually indicates a kind of actively running pulse, you see. So you may think it may indicate the flowing of the blood, or it may indicate that still my rationalistic faculty, you see, it's working. Still my rationalism is working. So fundamentally what he tries to say here, that I can stand on my own and I can think properly, okay, that is all my thinking and thought processes, all my knowledge is not, gone to astray till now. So ultimately I want a happier place. Okay, so it indicates therefore. So here he says that since while yet my steady steps no staff sustain, and life still vigorous revels in my veins, grant me kind heaven to find some happier place. Okay, happier place than London, obviously. So grant me kind heaven to find some happier place, where the place probably where honesty and sense are no disgrace. So fundamentally, what you will find here, that when Thales is stating that it would be a particular place, so that grant me the boon, O God, that I may move to a particular place where honesty and sense will not be considered to be disgraceful. What it indicates, you will find somehow that Thales is considering himself honest, Thales is considering himself sensible. And at the same time, you will find that actually, as we can find, that Thales is an imaginary person that has been created by Samuel Johnson himself. So he considers himself, and not only himself, but the other persons who are thinking in the same way, you see, that they are honest people, they are sensible people. And in London, honesty and sense, these are considered to be disgraceful by the supporters of Walpole and Walpole himself. So here he says that where honesty, so grant me kind heaven to find some happier place where honesty and sense are no disgrace. Okay, so it would be some pleasing bank, you see, where verdant osiers play. What is verdant osiers? Actually, you will find that the verdant osiers are actually referring to the green willow trees. Okay, some kinds of willow grow on the banks of streams, you see, and have long trailing branches that tremble in the breeze. So that's why here some natural descriptions have been incorporated. So that's why you say some pleasing bank, that is the bank of the river. Okay, it might be something related to the other rivers like Thames, where verdant osiers, that means the green willows, play. Some peaceful well, okay, some peaceful well with nature's paintings is gray. Okay, nature paintings gray. So what it indicates, that actually, as I mentioned, that it is actually indicating towards the beauty of nature. That means probably I will move to any particular place where I can find that the nature in its full form, you know, that it is something like a picturesque forms, and so this is actually being pointed out. So some pleasing bank where verdant osiers play, some peaceful vale with matures paintings gay, where once the harassed Briton found repose. So that means something related to some history, you see. As I've mentioned, that this particular phrase, it recurs in this particular poem, like Britain, true Britain, Britain. These are the terms, you see. So the fundamentally, it is actually indicating the harassed Britain. What the harassed Britain? Actually, it is referring to the ancient British inhabitants, okay, who retreated to the mountainous north and west when faced by the invasions of the Anglo-Saxons, right? So the you see that the harassed Britain are actually referring to the past forms fundamentally, and you will find that in this particular place they had taken repose, that is rest, after being driven by the Anglo-Saxons. Okay, and safe, that is, you will find here some pleasing bank where verdant osiers play, some peaceful vale with matures paintings gay, where once the harassed Briton found repose, and safe in poverty defied his foes. Okay, it is true that they actually led some poverty-stricken life, but they defied his foes, that is the Anglo-Saxons at that moment. So somehow these are actually indicating the harassed Britain is being referred in the present scenario. You will find that the harassed Britain is actually being referring to Thales right here, and he wants to find repose there in this particular place. It may be Scotland or Ireland, and he knows very well that ultimately by by leaving all his property here at London, he will leave a poverty stricken day there. But from there, from that particular place, he may continue to write in the same way as he wants to write. So fundamentally, you will find that somehow the reference to the bright and cheerful colors of nature, these are very much associated with the classical writing. You know that in the 18th century, many writers, not only Samuel Johnson, many writers, you see, following classical precedents, praise the life of retirement, okay, or withdrawal from the city to the countryside. So it is quite common. Most like Thales here envisaged the country as a picturesque place where a man of taste enjoyed the aesthetic pleasure of the paintings of nature rather than a place of hard agricultural labor or the hunger and poverty. So fundamentally, we'll find that this particular thing is being considered to be present here in this particular section. He continues that some secret cell, you see, that he says that I'm safe in poverty, defied his foes, some secret cell you powers indulgent give. Okay, what is the secret cell here? Secret cell is actually being indicated in terms of the cave of little habitation or of a religious person. You see that when you will find that any particular person, he moves to any furthest place, then he finds a secret cell there, a secret cave where he lives from the common eye. Okay, you see. So that is kept hidden. So some secret cell you powers indulgent give. Late, two dashes have been given. Late here, it actually indicates George the Second. You see, let George live here, for George has learned to live. So fundamentally, you will find that the George is being considered here. Why? Because you will find that the hint at George the Second, it actually refers to why the hint has been given, why George, this particular term, is not being mentioned in this particular poem. As I've mentioned, that though Samuel Johnson knew very well that I am stating something opposing George the Second, opposing the Hanoverian dynasty, opposing Walpole, but at the same time he didn't use his name, or rather he didn't use any particular name that has any political association with the contemporary England or contemporary London anymore. So that's why you will find that in the actual text, when Johnson is writing this particular poem, he is not using the actual name. Okay, rather he keeps him obscure. You see. So let George live here. That means I have to go to the farthest place in the close proximity with nature, obviously, and let George live here. For George had learned to live here. Let those reign. You see, whom pensions can incite to vote a patriot black, a courtier white. So these are the things, you see, that it is not only referring to George, it is not only referring to Walpole, rather it is indicating towards the Walpole's government, you see. And at the same time, you will find there are a group of politicians who are actually supporting Walpole to get favor. So fundamentally, we'll find that there is a particular kind of a clash was going on between the patriots and courtiers, you see. As I've mentioned in my previous lectures, while I was discussing about the politics behind London by Samuel Johnson, there I have mentioned about the patriot, okay, the true patriot, or young patriots. And somehow what happens, that during this particular time, it is not only the Whigs but also the Tories who actually make a pact, or made a pact, to go against Walpole at this moment. But at the same time, you will find that it's a kind of a vote that is being going on. The vote was between the Whigs and Tories. The vote was in between, the election was in between the Whigs and Tories, and at the same time, you will find the patriots and courtiers. You see, that is the followers or descendants of Walpole or George II, and maybe the opposers of George II. So here you will find that here satirically, in this particular section, Samuel Johnson writes that here let those reign, that not me. That means I am completely an alien, okay, in this particular society. So here let those reign. Who will reign here? The persons who are corrupt, Okay, the persons who are the followers or true followers or maybe the blind followers of Walpole, so here let those reign whom pensions, as I have mentioned earlier in the political section, you see the discussion on politics, that the persons or to get vote, obviously a particular amount was being invested by Walpole. So that is actually indicating in the particular term, that is pension. Okay, so here let those reign whom pensions can incite to vote a patriot black, a courtier white. So the two particular terms have been indicated here. Here you will find that the pensions, or what are the pensions actually? Here you will find that Johnson writes in his dictionary that pension is an allowance made to anyone without an equivalent. In England, it is generally understood to mean pay given to a state hireling for treason to his country. Walpole commonly won supporters by giving state pensions. So that is actually being pointed out by Harriet Raghunathan in his discussion on, or in his footnotes on London. Again, you will find that somehow it has been indicated that the patriots, regarding the patriot, it has been pointed out that the label that the opposition Whigs liked to give themselves, true patriot or maybe the young patriot, I have mentioned about them, truly. And then it says that in this period, the opposition Whigs and the Tories are united in disliking Walpole. His opponents were sometimes called the country party, as distinct from the court party, and I have mentioned about them. That is, those in power and holding positions or pensions given by Walpole or the king, that is George II, obviously. The patriots were those, that who opposed Walpole and the court party. Pensions grants were a common means of influencing MPs. Okay, Johnson says that pension, when Johnson received his own pension, actually. So there is a particular reference where Johnson has got his own pension of 3,300 pound per annum in 1762 from Lord Brute's ministry under George III. But ultimately, here, when this particular poem was written, you will find the reference to any particular kind of a pension was completely missing from Johnson, because at the time, Johnson was not being given any pension, and so that's why it says that it actually manipulates the election, it actually manipulates the voting, and there the political perspectives have been indicated. Okay, go with the introduction section, or maybe the discussion on the political perspective that is in our previous lectures, and then you will get that what Johnson is trying to point here. So here, let those reign whom pensions can incite to vote a patriot black, a courtier white. Explain their country's dear bought rights away. Okay, actually, here it has been written out that ultimately the young patriots, you see, so explain their country's dear bought rights away and plead for pirates in the face of day. So you will find that somehow this particular reference has again a topical association. What is the topical association? It actually indicates, you see, that it is referring to the arguments of Walpole's supporters in Parliament against war with Spain. I have mentioned about it in my discussion on politics. So you will find that against the war with Spain, Walpole's supporter, despite her piratical attacks on the British ships, the craftsman, as you can find, 13th May 1738, also complains against people being bribed with 500 pound a year to force and torture rhetoric in order to prove a longer forbearance in the Spanish affair beneficial to this nation. Ultimately, you will find that the parliamentary opposition denounced Walpole's policy of allowing the Spanish to stop and search all ships trading with their American colonies. Okay, the unacknowledged hypocrisy of Johnson's patriotic, quote unquote, patriotic rhetoric here is that English ships were the pirates and smugglers, you see, not the Spanish. And Spain had at this time the legal right to regulate the English merchant vessels created a popular indignation which was steadily augmented after the affairs of Jenkins's year in 1731 till in 1739 Walpole was forced against his will into a naval war with Spain. That actually happens, so fundamentally, we'll find that to explain their country's dear about right. So what is the dear about right? Dear about right is actually indicating towards the nationalistic agenda that actually makes or that indicates towards creating war or maybe coming into war with Spain. So that actually goes away with Walpole's decision and plead for pirates. Here actually the pirates are indicated or it is actually indicating towards the Spaniards in the face of day, that is plead for the pirates with slavish tenets. You see, it continues in this particular fashion. So with slavish tenets, uh, taint our poisoned youth and lamed a lie the confidence of truth. So again, it is actually indicating towards the particular kind of degeneration that is actually prevailing, a kind of a decadence that is prevailing, the corruption and pollution that is prevailing. And you will find that the slavish tenets, this particular phrase is actually indicating towards the servile principles or beliefs. Okay, the young are being poisoned by such ideas. That is the fundamental thing that it indicates, that the slavish tenets or the servile principles, it actually poisoned the young or the youth. Okay, and lamed a lie the confidence of truth. That means each and everywhere you will find that people lie as boldly and confidently as if they were telling the truth. So that is actually being indicated. So from each and every perspective, you will find that somehow Thales in this particular section, he is actually indicating towards the degeneration that is prevailing throughout London, the corruption that is prevailing throughout London, and at the same time, he is actually indicating towards the particular reason. It's a kind of a justification that why he should leave England. Okay, so it is actually continuing in this fashion. Then it says that let such raise palaces. Who are these such? These are actually indicating towards the supporters, the blind supporters, the blind corrupt supporters of Walpole. Okay, and with the particular reference to this, such, to some extent it is dehumanizing, right? As if you are referring to something rather someone. And in this particular form, he is creating a satire of the temperaments of these people. So here he says that let such, that such people, the supporters, raise palaces because they are blindly supporting them, and it is probable that they will gain something in return. So they might raise palaces and manors by collect a tax or farm a lottery. So here you will find the reference to the such or maybe the manners. Okay, what happens, that those who support the government without principle are rich enough to buy big houses, since the government in power has given them the rights to the income from certain taxes or lotteries. You will find that Johnson holds such people as the manners or maybe those people responsible for the cultural degeneration of the period as indicated in these lines. You will find in the next lines the same thing is being incorporated. Here he says that let such people raise palaces, and the manners, that means the other part of these people, he can buy something, he can collect a tax, he can farm a lottery, you see. Okay, with warbling eunuchs fill a licensed stage. The reference to the eunuch, what it indicates, it actually indicates, okay, the lottery is okay, this particular thing I have missed. So the government lotteries, it is actually indicating towards the government lotteries, and these were very frequent in the 18th century. Now the warbling eunuchs, what it says, castrati or eunuchs, you see, had the high voices necessary for male soprano parts in the Italian opera, right? Which was fashionable at the time. The Italian opera was very much present during the time of Samuel Johnson. But opera, this particular form, was criticized by Alexander Pope in the Dancier, as we know, by Addison in the Spectators, and also Samuel Johnson here. So you will find that in the licensed, quote unquote, licensed stage, because the stage was not free, you see, as I have discussed in the politics part, obviously. That is, whenever you have to perform something, there was a kind of an act that was imposed on you, okay, the licensing act. And with the warbling eunuchs fill a licensed stage, and you will find that the typical Johnsonian thinking, it actually laid it, some masculine perspectives have been incorporating, it is something patriarchal. I will not go with that particular form why patriarchy is used, being used by Samuel Johnson or so. So with warbling eunuchs fill a licensed stage. So the licensed stage is the society, what is prevailing here, okay? And the eunuchs are the persons, who are blindly supporting Walpole. Okay, but it actually, along with this particular metaphorical association, you will find that somehow it is indicating towards the topical association of the soprano of Italian opera and so that is prevailing throughout London at this time. So topical references obviously there. So here it says that let such raise palaces and manors buy, collect a tax, a farm a lottery, with warbling eunuchs fill a licensed stage, and lull to servitude a thoughtless age. The age is thoughtless. That is the fundamental thing that Samuel Johnson is trying to propagate. The age is completely thoughtless. They are not thinking about something positive. They are not the thoughtful persons. And these persons, to gain something, they are lulling to servitude. You see? That is, they are serving them blindly. Okay. The license stage, as I mentioned, that it is actually the Licensing Act of 1737, ordered that all plays and other stage entertainments had to apply for a license from the Lord Chamberlain 14 days before the performance. This act was intended to prevent satires on Walpole's government, such as those written by Fielding. The original editions of London read our silenced stage, and now it is licensed stage. This was altered to a licensed stage in 1748. Johnson satirized this censorship in his ironical A Complete Vindication of the Licensates of the Stage in 1739. So this is in the footnote by Harriet Raghunathan. Then it says that heroes, you see, heroes proceed. So in the next section that begins with this particular term, heroes, you will find that it is not actually referring to the heroes any longer. Rather, you will find that the heroes are being used satirically. Who are the heroes? Quote unquote heroes who are considered as heroes by the government of Walpole. So here he says, heroes proceed. What bounds your pride shall hold? That means there is nothing that can bind your pride, you see. What check restrain your thirst of power and gold? So you have the thirst, you are thirsty of power, you are thirsty of gold, you see. And there is nothing that can restrain your thirst, right? Behold rebellious virtue quite overthrown. So see, just see the rebellious virtue, okay, quite overthrown. Who are the rebellious virtues, or who are the rebellious virtuous persons? Actually, it is indicating towards the opponents to Walpole and the Walpole's government. And fundamentally, you will find that the rebellious virtuous persons, these actually, or those actually, included Samuel Johnson himself. Johnson was one of them. So he says, therefore, behold rebellious virtue, quite overthrown. Behold our fame, our wealth, our lives, your own. That means you have a complete control over us. So that is the thing, you see, that the satiric representation of all these things. That is our fame, our wealth, our lives, your own. So just think, just see that all that I do possess, all that we, okay, do possess, the patriots do possess as your own. You have the control over them. So you can take whenever you want. You can seize whenever you want because we have nothing, but you have all control. So that is the satiric representation. Then he writes, to such, a groaning nation spoils are given. Okay. To such a groaning nation spoils are given when public crimes inflame the wrath of heaven. So there it says that the groaning nation spoils is actually indicates the plunder looted from the people by those in power. Okay, the groaning nations, as you can identify, these are referring to the sufferers. Okay, so to such a groaning nation spoils are given when public crimes, these are actually indicating the crimes against the public or people, inflame the wrath of heaven. Then he says, but what, my friend, what hope remains for me? So in this particular section, or from this particular section, you will find up to line number 78 almost, you will find that here is a reference to the persons who wins favor from Walpole. So it is obviously some satirical representation that he is making, or Johnson is making in this particular section. He says, but what, my friend, what hope remains for me? Who start at theft and blush at perjury? Who skirts for beer? Though Britain's court he sing, to pluck a title poet's borrowed wing. So ultimately, you will find that these are actually indicating towards the terms, you see. That, but what, my friend, what hope remains for me? Who start at theft, you see, the term again. The various kinds of tortures, various kinds of crimes is being indicated. You will find here theft, perjury, okay, who skirts for beard the Britain's court hissing, that is though Britain's court hissing. So this Britain's court is actually referring to the court of Britain, that is the reference to true Britain, it can be indicated. But here in the literal sense, it can indicate towards the court of Walpole, obviously. So who skirts for beard, though Britain's court hissing, to pluck a title poet's borrowed wing. Who is the title poet? The person who has been positively being acclaimed by the king or maybe the prime minister at this moment. The wing is borrowed, you see. Okay, so actually by referring to the straight references, you see, uh, Johnson is actually referring to something satiric. To pluck a titled poet's borrowed wing. A statement's logic unconvinced can hear. A statement's logic unconvinced can hear. And then it says, and dare to slumber over the gazetteer. You know what is gazetteer? You will find somehow that it is actually indicating towards the daily gazetteer, which was the official newspaper of Walpole's ministry. Founded in 1735, Johnson elsewhere writes satirically of the government's attempts to complete cultural control. He writes, I cannot but indulge myself a little by dwelling on these pleasing scenes, and imagining those halcyon days in which no politics shall be read, but those of the gazetteer, nor any poetry, but that of the laureate. Okay. He again writes, the writers of the gazetteer were contemptible scribblers of the ministerial vindications, a herd of wretches, low drudges, obscurely. Okay, so scurrility. So ultimately, you will find that the term gazetteer, it actually indicates a slumber, dare to slumber over gazetteer, because the gazetteer actually indicates something that it's a kind of a propaganda that actually being created by the reporters of gazetteer, and it creates the propaganda in favor of the Walpole's government. So here it actually indicates that a statement's logic unconvinced can hear and dare to slumber over gazetteer. In this particular reference, he is actually indicating that I do not have that particular courage to slumber over gazetteer. That means I have to, if I have to live here in at London, just like the other personages, I have to think about gazetteer something of high esteem, you see. Okay. He continues in the same fashion. He says that despise a fool in half his pension dressed, and strive in vain to laugh at Harvey's jest. Here again, you will find that the ellipses have been made. It is elliptical, and ultimately, you will find the name has not been properly being used. Okay, this particular reference, that is H dash Y, it is probably John Lord Harvey. Okay, he was also satirized by Pope in Epistle to Arbuthnot, Dr. Arbuthnot, under the name of Sporus, and by Fielding under the name of Beau de Dapper in Joseph Andrews. Fielding and Pope were both enemies of Walpole, as we know, while Harvey was his supporter. However, Johnson was a friend of Harvey's brother Harry, and here might refer to orator Henley, author of the pro-Walpole Hip Doctor. So what it indicates that despite a fool in half his pension dressed, here fool is being indicated uh, as the supporter of Walpole and the writers in the gazetteers, and they are getting pension and they are dressed in as it has been wanted by Walpole, and strive in vain to laugh at Harvey's jest. That means Harvey's writing cannot be considered as true to spirit. So ultimately, the gesticulations can be laughed at by a person. So all these things are being associated with the term dare, you see, in the previous slide. Then it writes, others with softer smiles and subtler art. So others, who are others? Others means some persons who are completely different from Thales. So others with softer smiles and subtler art can sap the principles or taint the heart. So in the previous stanza, the last stanza, we have found that everywhere Thales is indicating that he cannot do all these things, Yusuf, but as he is the honest person. But here in the next stanza, you will find that he is indicating to the persons who wins favor from Walpole. And he says that others, that means the persons who are the hypocrites, or maybe the persons who actually wants to win favor. Others, and they have the softer smiles, they have the subtler art. Okay, they can sap the principles. Okay, what is sap? Here, sap means undermine, right? To us, this is no longer a military term, but originally it meant the digging of tunnels and laying of explosives under enemy position. In this particular poem, you will find that Johnson is deliberately using a number of terms related to warfare, just like ambush or spoils, warrior, conqueror, invade, ransack, everything you see. Here can sap the principles. This particular term is being referred as explode the principles. That means principles are no longer needed in this society. So these persons, who the others, you see, who have the softer smile, who has who have the subtler art, they can sap the principles or taint the heart. With more address, a lover's note convey. That means in their addressings, in their writing, you can find a true lover's note is being conveyed, or bribe a virgin's innocence away. So the virgin's innocence, it may indicate that the writing with a proper honesty or some innocent form of writing, and with a certain form of bribing, you see, that particular honest writing has gone to astray. It is completely being eradicated from everywhere, you see. Then it says, well, may they raise, these others, well, they may raise, or may they raise, or they may rise. Okay, while I, whose rustic tongue. Okay, so here you can find that Thales sees himself as rustic, unskilled in rhetoric, and therefore unable to puzzle right or properly. So here he says that, well, may they raise, that means the persons who have the oratorial power, the persons who maybe can write in the form of hypocrisy or anything. So here he says that, well, may they rise, while I, whose rustic tongue, I have the rustic tongue, that means I am the straightforward person, and I do write what I do feel, whose rustic tongue never knew puzzle right or varnish wrong. So these two terms, that is puzzle right, it actually indicates to make intricate or to entangle, and varnish wrong, it is actually indicating to hide the color of the rhetoric. That means wrong varnish. When you varnish on an wooden craft, you see that ultimately you try to minimize its actual color, right? So in the form of language, when these terms have been indicated, it actually indicates that what you do feel and what you do say, these are completely different. And Thales says, I cannot say, I cannot train myself in this particular way. He says that, well, may they rise while I, whose rustic tongue never knew to puzzle right or varnish wrong, I spurned, or Thales himself is considering that spurned as a beggar. Spurned, it means kicked away. That I was the person who was kicked away as a beggar, and I was dreaded as a spy. Okay, I live unregarded and unlamented. I will die certainly. Okay, so it is my future that Thales is indicating. For what but social guilt the friend endears? What but social guilt? What kind of social guilt is being indicated? Is it the guilt in which people are allies? Okay. So what but social guilt? The friend. Who are the friend? The friend are actually the friends of Walpole. Okay. The persons who shares Orgilio's crime, his fortune shares. Who is Orgilio? The friends are sharing Orgilio's crime. You will find that this Orgilio, the name suggests Orgilus. Okay, it's an old form of the word Orgulus. Johnson defined Orgilus as a proud and haughty person, you see, quote unquote proud and haughty. Orgilio, this particular term, is a parallel to Verres. Who is Verres? At this point in Juvenal's poem, Verres was a very corrupt governor of Sicily. The Roman orator and writer Cicero wrote a famous indictment of his crimes. So ultimately, we'll find that Orgilio and Verres in the Juvenal's writing, we can find the same orientation has been made. So here he actually indicates that the friend, that actually indicates the friends of uh, Walpole, they actually endears being associated with the social guilt, that is the guilt against society, and they are sharing the same crime that Verres did in Juvenal's poem, and it is here it is being referred as the proud and haughty person like Orgilio, an invented name, obviously. Okay, and his fortune shares, that is what happened to Verres. Okay, ultimately, out of the corruption that he is doing at the time, he got some fortunes, some material prosperity, and they are also sharing the same kind of prosperity. Okay, so today up to this, uh, we'll resume our reading of the text London from line number 85 in our last lecture. Okay, so today up to this then, thank you. Here you will find a particular reference is being made on the e-learning modules related to your courses. Just go with the link and you will find some course materials, and e-learning modules will be prepared in due course. Thank you then.